Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of Viral Banter, the Generation Liberty Forum podcast. Today I am joined by 4 amazing young people who are all members of Generation Liberty to talk about our topics of the week. So first up, welcome back a familiar face, Theodora Pantelich, our campus coordinator at the University of Melbourne.
Hi Renee, thank you for having me back on the show.
Always good to have you on. And next up is a friend of the show and the president of the Victorian Liberal Students Association. Her name is Charlotte, and we're very glad to have her on the show for the first time. Welcome, Charlotte.
Thanks for having me, Renee, and always good to see you.
And next up on the show, we have another familiar face, Boston, our amazing campus coordinator down in the south in Wollongong. How are you doing, Boston?
Down in the south in Wollongong.
I'm used to referring to Wollongong as south. Okay,
that's all right.
Still haven't adjusted to the fact that I live in Melbourne, or that I'm trapped in Melbourne right now.
Well, I'm on the better side of the border in New South Wales, and thank you for having me back.
And our last guest on the show, but certainly not the least, she's starred in a recent IPA video, We Want to Work, but she's also a great friend of myself and the show. It's Julia Sekulic.
Hi, Renee. It's great to be here this morning.
Did I pronounce your last name right?
No.
Okay, no, you have to teach me. I'm going to be good. You're going to tell me how to say it right.
Okay. Every time you see that word last name ending with the IC, always know it's an itch.
Itch? Sekulic. Sekulic. Okay, that is a good tip. Always there to try and improve. So you guys may have seen an article in the Herald Sun this morning. Boston, you may not have, but I think we've sent it through to you because it is a Victorian paper about the fact that multiple universities in Australia, this one was specifically about the Victorian universities, still charging SSAF fee during this pandemic. So for context for our viewers, the SSAF fee is a compulsory free fee of up to $308 that was introduced by the Gillard government in 2011. In 2004, the John Howard government got rid of compulsory student unionism because it was argued, and rightly, that students shouldn't be forced to pay for political activism that they may not agree with. So when the Gillard government and the Rudd government got back into power, they reintroduced something called SSAF, and it was reintroduced under the pretense that these fees would be compulsory, but they would be spent on practical and tangible amenities and services that you could see around the university, not on political activism by the student union. Generally, that does not seem to be the case on university, and also right now a lot of those services are not available for students, but they're still having to pay this fee. Theodora, why do you think a lot of universities are still charging this fee?
Yeah, I guess on the surface you can assume that this is just a desperate kind of cash grab by the universities because they have lost such significant amounts of money since the beginning of this pandemic, and we're seeing that their over-reliance on international student fees has left them financially unprepared for this situation. But on top of that, this actually just shows that unis don't actually need the extra $308 per student per year to provide services, because there are currently no services whatsoever while everyone is attending uni in an online setting. But I think additionally, we can only assume that the decision by the universities to continue to charge a SSAF just indicates a lack of compassion for students who are financially struggling during this difficult time, which is really incongruous with their cheesy copy and paste messages of support, which they're emailing to students like 100 times a week. Because as we know, something like 60% of 18 to 24-year-olds have lost their job or had their hours cut because of coronavirus. So a lot of students aren't in a position to pay an extra few $100s right now. So ultimately, I think it's hypocritical to say, we're here for you in one email and pay us $308 by Monday, or you can't graduate or see your results in another email an hour later.
Yeah, it definitely seems like an incongruous message that the universities are sending, especially at the ones where they're still charging the fee. Boston, you're one of the lucky ones. You're at the University of Wollongong. that have waived the fee. La Trobe University has done the same, and I know that Deakin University has lowered their fee to the online student fee, which makes a lot of sense. I've personally noticed that a lot of the smaller and regional universities are the ones who are cutting that student fee. Do you think there is a reason for why these smaller universities are more willing?
To be honest, I don't know the real reason, but my best guess is that smaller and regional unis actually tend to receive less international students. International students, they prefer to go to universities like Sydney University, UNSW, Melbourne University. So I think that might be the reason why. But honestly, I wouldn't have I don't know why they're cutting the SSAF fees at unis like mine.
I think it may have something to do with some of the smaller universities aren't quite as entrenched in student politics and don't have quite as powerful student union movements that could put pressure on their administrations, but that's just speculation. Charlotte, student unions on the whole who are supposed to champion student rights have remained very quiet on the subject of SSAF. Why do you think that is?
Oh, there's a clear conflict of interest there, Renee, because the University of Melbourne Student Union, for example, their slice of the SSAF pie has grown significantly in recent years. And between 2016 and 2018, they received about $51.5 million in SSAF, and a third of that went to the union. So it's clearly motivated by vested interests, and they don't want to take money out of their pockets, as Theodora said, so students in turn are stuck with a mandatory fee that has to be paid up front. So a lot of students actually support tuition fee relief because their experience of online learning is simply not comparable to physical learning. It doesn't provide the same academic rigor. So the same principle should apply to SSAF. If you relate what is being paid for in the SSAF to what is being offered, right now we're getting very poor value for money indeed, and the unions will avoid any debates about SSAF and VSU to save their own pockets.
Yeah, I think there is a really serious conflict of interest there that SSAF has created, because effectively the university is the body that passes on these fees to the union. So the union has a vested interest not to be overly critical of the university, especially when it comes to a fee that funds their services. So it seems that they're putting their needs above that of students. So it seems ridiculous right now that students are being forced to pay these people who don't even properly represent them. But Julia, have you seen any value out of this SSAF money you've had to pay this semester at all?
I haven't. And given the change to an online campus with online events, discussion groups, workshops, the resources that we were once used to have now been stripped back to their most basic form. And I would be lying that if I didn't say that I was benefiting from at least one UMSU change. That being the virtual barbecues that are on offer with sausages at your own expense. Who knew virtual snacks would be worth $308?
That is absolutely crazy. And I know that there's been some really odd explanations for where this SSAF is being spent. And I'm sure there's many, many valuable services on offer. I've heard, for example, there is a Zoom climate strike at Melbourne University. Theodora, do you have any more examples of some exciting services they could be getting for their $308?
Yeah, so I've got to be honest, the online climate strike is not that weird compared to some of the other events happening, which bear the brought to you by the SSAF emblem. So for example, on the 29th of April, UMSU hosted an event called the Feminist Climate Action Online Workshop. And the event description for that one read, "We are excited to welcome the Women's Climate Justice Collective to help us host and run this workshop. They are a national group led by women aiming to mainstream feminist climate justice and support women in the climate and women's rights movements." And there's a little postscript at the bottom which said, "We'd also like to acknowledge that sexism has disproportionately affected non-binary people and that they should always be at the forefront of our feminist activism," which I'm not too sure actually has anything to do with climate justice, but whatever. And there's another event which gave me a really good laugh. It reads like satire. It's just the absolute stereotype of like a socialist, feminist, hippie student union event. So I'll read it out to you just quickly, if that's okay. It's called Deconstructing the Ideal Activist, Gender in Activist Communities. And it is going to discuss the issues inherent in the construct of the ideal activist and how gendered roles manifest within activist communities that are trying to fight against forms of oppression and espouse a progressive worldview. They were inspired by Emma Craddock, who is apparently an expert on how gendered roles are appearing in British anti-austerity movements, and it is a reflective look at how activist communities can unintentionally preserve societal forms of oppression within their structures, and how activists can deconstruct these models within their own groups through holding themselves and others to account within activist communities, if you can make any sense of that at all. So there you go, like students are paying for these and many other similar events, so what is there to worry about?
I know, that's clearly a tangible, practical event that is definitely apolitical, and you should be not worried that your $300 is being spent on that. But there is a guest that has been wanting to come onto the show for a while, and she keeps attacking my ankles, so...
Aww.
Hello, Ziggy. You gonna say hello to the Viral Banter audience? Okay. She's probably gonna sit here for the rest of the show.
That's all right.
Okay, cool. Can I still be heard? With a cat on my lap. There we go. Oh, she settled in. Cool. So we have a cat for the rest of this podcast.
Maybe she has something to comment.
But Boston, you've been in student politics for a while. I believe you had a position on the Student Representative Council at Wollongong Uni. Can you tell me about what that experience was like and the back and forth that has been going on at Wollongong Uni at the past few years?
So I wasn't we don't have a Student Representative Council like they do on other campuses. I was on the Student Advisory Council, which was an advisory board for the university, and I was the Indigenous representative. I don't, due to the nature of our campus, I don't think politics takes the prime position. I mean, the vast majority of students who come to Wollongong, they're there just to study and socialise. The only people who actually care about politics are those who are actually studying politics or in political groups like myself. But I'll give you an example of why I don't think it's politics at the forefront. So in one of the meetings we had, one of the socialists brought forth a motion to have the meetings on public record to enable students to come to the meetings and to record, because at the moment they're not recorded and they're not available for public viewing. And I was the only one who actually supported her motion. So, like, I don't think there's that sort of politics behind it all. Furthermore, the politics on our campus is not very hostile either. So, I feel lucky that our uni, we don't have that environment of political hostility and conflict that they do at Sydney University and Melbourne. So maybe I'm missing out on something. Maybe I'm not experiencing the full university experience. But it's probably a good thing that our uni is quite less political, because I think there's more practical measures that have been able to be put into effect.
Well, no, I that's kind of my memories of Wollongong as well, Boston, that it was a very apolitical campus, maybe because it was regional, maybe because, a lot of the students that came from there were from other regional backgrounds as well. Ziggy's going now. But I feel like I've seen a little bit of invasion into regional universities lately, professional student activists moving to regional universities that they've noticed don't have that political influence, and that's getting a little bit worrying. And I noticed a little bit at that happening at Wollongong before the end, but it's good that it's not infecting it too much so far. But Julia, hearing all these stories, do you think that most student unions still represent the views and the interests of average students these days?
Unfortunately, no. However, I knew what I was signing up for when I decided to attend this university, and the overwhelmingly progressive message that they are trying to uphold. So long as this is the perpetual narrative, voices like our own will never see the light of day, since we'll never have that platform that socialist groups do.
Yeah, it's a bit sad when you think about it in that way. And one of the main problems, I think, is that conservative or libertarian or just not left-wing students, when they go to uni, they just go there, get their degree done and leave, whilst there will be an array of students who are there specifically for political activism for years and years on end. Charlotte, have you seen that it is hard to get a footing for certain like non-leftist groups just because we're getting our degrees done and we're not concentrating on that activism level?
Yeah, it's definitely hard for many students to, for example, go through a regular day at university without facing some sort of political activism from others. And it's hard for students of a minority opinion to make their voices heard. By the majority opinion, go on.
And you may have heard that Generation Liberty had some problems during orientation week this year, but I also heard that your student group, Victorian Liberal Students Association, have also had some issues this year. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, there's definitely parallels between how VLSA members were treated and the Generation Liberty ones. You guys, as I'm aware, you had your store application knocked back while we were blocked by union security when we tried to hand out some flyers in our capacity as private students and individuals. So it really seems to me that whatever form it takes, it's just another example of a student-funded union silencing certain voices on campuses, while, for example, other groups have been enabled week after week, year after year, like Socialist Alternative, for example. You hear them all the time outside the Bailey Library yelling about overthrowing the government, as it were. So these examples, they're definitely not isolated cases, and I'm pretty sure that they breach various freedom of speech codes at the universities, which seems to suggest to me that it's just not enough to have a freedom of speech code, nor is it enough to enforce them as well, because it's part of an ingrained culture that's going to be quite hard to change.
Yeah, I think that you raise some really important points there. You know, that rules and regulations or things brought in by the government are only worth the paper that it's written on. And if there's no cultural shift at universities, then we're not going to see much change. And also, whilst unions have like a significant amount of power, a lot of these problems aren't going to change. So a Generation Liberty has noticed, as the government has come in and said, we're going to be introducing these free speech acts, so universities themselves will not be impinging on free speech or deplatforming and security fees. Unions have stepped in to block events instead. And that's where we're getting our difficulty now. And the union can kind of claim if they want to be not part of the university, but effectively, if the union's blocking you from participating in university life, they are blocking your free speech on campus. So it's the same thing. But we are all talking about the problems with universities and unions. It's what's going on. So I'm going to ask you all, if you were the chancellor of your university for a day and you could change as much as you want, what would you do? We'll start with Theodora.
I have actually thought about this many a time, just imagining what it would be like to be in charge of the uni, not because of the massive vice chancellor salary at all, but so I think I'd probably start with making the campus aesthetically more appealing and bulldozing all the brutalist buildings, because I don't think they're very conducive to learning. I'd definitely be revamping course structure, get rid of breadth subjects, get rid of arts foundation subjects. I think they're exclusive to Melbourne Uni. And I'd be trying to bring back the focus to scholarly excellence in the humanities in particular, bring in more of the classic liberal arts education that you'd see at a place like Campion College, for example, rather than having like 150,000 subjects on ridiculously niche topics. So that would replace the dogmatic approach which we currently see in the humanities at Melbourne Uni. I think in terms of student representation, I try to change the role of the student union. I don't think they should have any kind of an activist role within university life. I don't even think they should be involved with student clubs and societies. They should just leave clubs to manage their own affairs. I also I think I would make all academic staff reapply for their positions to make sure that they meet my standards of academic rigor, and then if need be, we could replace staff who are too mired in their ideological approach to teaching.
Just say it, loving boss lady Theodora.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, I just want to open up the discussion and have staff who care about what they teach and who want to teach students how to think, not what to think. And yeah, there are probably like a million other things I'd change, but that's it for my one day as Chancellor.
Loving the vibe there. And Boston, what would you change if you could change some things about your university?
I think my uni were pretty lucky to have such a diverse range of academic subjects. So I think I'd set out to ensure that there were better standards regulating both academic freedom and freedom of speech and association on campus for both staff and students, to ensure that they feel more comfortable on campus to express their views and opinions.
Very important. And Charlotte, how would you change Melbourne University?
Well, I'd start by restoring voluntary student unionism and abolishing any compulsory student services and amenities fees. Students should be able to choose who represents them and how. And if they don't want to be represented, then that's fine as well. Voluntary student unionism, I think, is the default state of student association, and it should be restored. But a second thing that I do is to diversify our revenue sources. So education, as we know, is one of Australia's big exports, one of 5 of our biggest exports. And we've gained a lot in money terms from the export of our education to international students. But we are also the most China-reliant developed country. So on the flip side, we stand to lose a lot in the current geopolitical environment, with trade tensions rising and the impact of foreign interference on our universities. So that's something that we have to think very critically about, is where we get our revenue from.
No, I think that's very important. And Julia, if you could be in charge of Melbourne University, what would you do?
Like Charlotte said, I would abolish compulsory student unionism, and then I would employ and guest more right-wing lecturers and speakers, just to free us from the indoctrination that you see in our average everyday class. We truly need to open the dialogue.
No, I think that's very important. I've been trying to think how I would answer this question. I think the main problems on campus have been, if you want to see one of the real issues that has increased during time as universities have got worse and worse, is bureaucratic staff numbers have increased exponentially. And so, 18,000 diversity officers that you're paying for, the head of diversity at Melbourne Uni who gets some ridiculous 6-figure salary. A lot of these people are getting paid more than your professors. So I think that one of the biggest things I would do would be to slice the bureaucratic department or anything that's not directly academic in half in any university that I took over, just because I think that would be a really important move. And also to kill any department that ends in the word studies. So gender studies is gone. Cultural studies is gone. All these studies programs, which have been invented recently, doesn't mean that, looking into gender within a historical context isn't interesting, but a lot of these subjects have just become intellectually vapid and watered down and not what you go to a university for. But one of the other big stories that we have had at the IPA recently, if we're talking about vapid and watered down and self-centered, is the wonderful work that Evan at the office has done looking into FOIs at the ABC and some of the discoveries we made in their little climate groups that they have at the ABC. Charlotte, have you seen this story and what are your thoughts?
Yes, I have seen the story, and that was good work on part of Evan and the IPA. It doesn't surprise me at all that the taxpayer-funded ABC is unbalanced and out of control, especially with an important issue like the environment, which affects future generations. How can we expect to have a serious discussion about environmental policy when the terms of the debate have already been set in this way? And in the same way that taxpayer funds can't be used to fund party political communication for members of parliament, we shouldn't be using taxpayer money to fund journalism with a palpable bias. And I doubt the ABC represents the opinions of mainstream Australians, but we're all still having to fund it.
No, there's some really good points there, Charlotte. They seem to be incredibly out of touch. Theodora, what struck you most while reading through these findings by Evan?
Yeah, I would agree with Charlotte there. I think the fact that the ABC would even consider allowing such an activist form of journalism to direct them is just a massive betrayal of their role as the state broadcaster. And as Charlotte said, it just proves once again how completely out of touch the ABC and their staff are. The Australian public should be getting unbiased news reporting and should be getting really high quality products for their money because it is taxpayers' money at stake here. So I think if the ABC wants to pursue this kind of climate activism, they need to stop receiving government funding and just prove that they can survive just on their own merit, on the merits of their work.
Very true. And Boston, you may have recently seen a report by GetUp on some devastating budget cuts that were shown at the ABC, but which have been revealed to have some dodgy numbers. But much like the student unions, I could be wrong, but I always sort of GetUp being about a young audience and political issues that matter to young people. Do you think that many young people are passionate about the ABC? And if so, if you don't think they are, why do you think that GetUp is focusing on this so much?
Yeah, so I think I want to focus on the report itself from GetUp for a second. So on their page, they refer to the ABC as the beating heart of Australia. So I'll have to disagree with GetUp there. I think the real beating heart of Australia is everyday Australians who contribute to the advancement of our society and those who are protecting us on the front lines, be that in our defence force or the emergency services currently fighting the pandemic. And going back to what you said about young people and the ABC, look, I think there is a group of people who do like the ABC, including some young people. However, most people I know, many of whom are not political at all, they don't watch the ABC. They don't really care about the ABC. They're more interested in either one of the major commercial broadcasters who are playing the sport or who have news programs or get their news and entertainment source from online sources or social media. So for the most part, and from the people I talk to, there is a lack of passion for the ABC from many people that I know personally. And I don't think GetUp gets that much traction from young people either. I may be wrong because I'm only talking from experience here. So at the last federal election, when they had all the GetUp people coming to campaign, there was about 7 on my booth. I was the only one handing out for the Liberal Party. Not one of them was under the age of 50, in my opinion. Not one of them. And I guess GetUp appeals to a certain group of progressives. That may include young people. I'm not denying that. But I think the majority of young people are actually quite apolitical, which is a broader reflection on all sides of politics, I guess. And especially with political engagement with young people, because for the most part, most people are disengaged with politics.
Oh, you raised some really interesting points there. And yeah, I do think that Get Up kind of puts up this veil or this presentation that they're for young people, but maybe behind the scenes that may not be the case. But Julia, getting down to the real hard question, why should we privatise the ABC?
Like Theodora was previously saying, if we really wanted to see this type of organisation survive, it should compete like the rest of the media industry by listening to public opinion and catering to their interests. They need to prove that they are commercially viable and that they can stay afloat without government or taxpayers' support.
Very, very true. Well, thank you all for coming on the show this week and sharing your thoughts. I think it's been a really great, fun show, and I would like to thank Theodora, Boston, Charlotte, and Julia for all their contribution.
Thank you, Renee.
Thanks for having me.
And if you are not already a member, make sure you join Generation Liberty at generationliberty.org.au and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Generation Liberty IPA. The membership for Generation Liberty is only $10 and you will get a buttload of merch. You will get a book. You will get fun stickers. You will get badges. You will get so much. And it's only $10 and you'll be part of the biggest liberty movement in Australia for young people. So join now. But Theodora, can you tell our audience about our all new book club podcast and how they can listen in the future?
Yeah, so this week we filmed the first episode of Better Read Than Dead, which is our new book club podcast. Each month we'll be talking about the book of the month. For this month it was Heart of Darkness. So we're hoping to release that I believe in the next week. So make sure you're subscribed to our Generation Liberty YouTube channel so you can listen to that one when it comes out as well.
Very exciting. And I'd just like to say thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay happy, and stay free.